Test, 1, 2. Test 1, 2.
All right, we got about 30
All
seconds.
right, thank you.
Live from the Civic Media World Headquarters in Madison, Wisconsin, it's the Todd Allbaugh Show. And now, pursuing truth wherever it may lead, here's your host, Todd Allbaugh.
Ross, Wisconsin on the Civic Media Radio Network and streaming worldwide on the Civic Media app. Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Todd Allbaugh, along with Mr. Aaron Zommers, our outstanding producer and engineer. It is 6 minutes past the hour of 12 noon on this Friday, TGIF, January 3rd, 2025. It is a great day to be a Wisconsinite, coming to you from beautiful downtown Madison, Wisconsin, the capital, just down the street from where on Monday we will have our state legislative inaugurations for both the state Senate and state assembly. But today, all eyes are focused in a nation's capital, in Washington, D.C., where at this hour, underway in the United States House of Representatives, the vote for Speaker of the House. Only two people were nominated. In the nominating speeches, incumbent Republican Representative Mark Johnson of Louisiana and Democratic leader Hakeem Jeffries, Democrat from Bronx, New York. I'm sorry, Queens, I believe he's from. Hakeem Jeffries. I can tell you at this hour, it is 68-67. Now 68-68. Here's the bottom line. Mike Johnson can only afford to really lose one vote because one of his members has said absolutely unequivocally he is not voting for Johnson. That means that Johnson can really only lose one more member, assuming that everybody else votes for him and all the Democrats vote for Jeffries, which the Democrats, by the way, came out and said that that's what they're committed to, unlike earlier this year when they bailed the speaker out, Mike Johnson, and the Republicans by voting with them to save Mike Johnson, by voting with them to get a continuing resolution. Democrats say they're unified, and today Republicans are on their own. Mike Johnson on his own. Here's what's interesting at this hour. So far, two people who were considered, two members of the Republican caucus who were considered on the fence have voted with Johnson. That's good news if you're Mike Johnson and the Republicans. Here's the kicker. Three other Republican members who were said to be on the fence, who are non-committal, have thus far not been present. Their names were called and they were not in the chamber. However, they were here for what's called a quorum call, basically taking attendance. So we know that those members are in Washington. They very well could be in the Capitol proper, but simply not on the House floor. If those three members do not come back at the end and vote for Johnson, we'll have to go to at least one more ballot. So things are tenuous at best right now for Speaker Mike Johnson. As the vote is being called, we have it live for you right now. We're going to continue to follow it. We'll bring you live updates here as we go throughout the afternoon. Why is this so important? Well, a couple of different things. We talked about this yesterday. And whether or not whomever you voted for president, in order for our government to work, in order for it to function, we have another important day, which of course will live in infamy, January 6th coming up. That is when the results of the presidential election must be certified, the results from the Electoral College. According to House rules, they cannot do any official business without a speaker. And so technically, by the book, the House cannot take care of the confirmation, certification of the presidential election on the 6th if they don't have a speaker by then. Remember last session, it took 15 votes to finally get House Speaker Kevin McCarthy voted in. Or he was going to get voted in, and finally, took care of that, and then Matt Gaetz messed it up a few months later, and that's how we got Johnson. So, number one, just to do the business of certifying the election and getting ready for the inauguration on the 20th of January, we need a speaker in 3 days. Number two, it's just enormously embarrassing as Americans. It shows the lack of functionality to our federal government, particularly under Republican control. And listeners of this broadcast know I'm an institution guy. Part of the reason the government works both in federal and state is because of our institutions, of keeping them consistent. And I know, I get it, and they're valid points. Well, the institutions aren't always fair to everyone. People get left out and get left behind. Yes, they're imperfect. But they've kept the country going for almost 250 years. And when institutions break down, that is when you can have extremism creep in from both the right and the left. Institutions keep our units of government somewhat consistent and centrist. So you don't want chaos. Whichever side of the political fence you're on, you don't want chaos. It's just not good for the country. So we shall see. President Donald Trump had to again come out this morning and say that he was all in on Speaker Mike Johnson, trying to convince Republicans in the House to once again do his bidding and get Johnson over the line. It is now 91-87 Johnson as the votes continue to be cast. Again, thus far, 2 of the people, Republicans on the fence for Johnson, have voted for him. 3 people, Republicans on the fence, have not voted. They have, I don't want to say abstained yet because their name was called and they did not answer. They were not on the floor. And in Congress, you have to be on the floor in order to vote. And of course, most votes in the United States House of Representatives are done electronically by little buttons at their desk. But this particular vote for Speaker is like the votes in the Senate, where it's verbal and called out. So we will continue to monitor that. Also, just as a side note, as someone who worked for a member of the House of Representatives for almost 5 years, and speaking of institutions, this is a big day because it's the one time that as a member of the House of Representatives, you were allowed to bring your family and your kids onto the floor of the House. And I was listening to coverage earlier this morning on CNN, and there was one member, this was their third time being elected. And the first time was COVID, so they couldn't do anything then. The second time, it was the whole row with Kevin McCarthy, so they had to send their family home. So this is like, the first time where their family's been able to see them get sworn in. And it's supposed to be a collegial time, a time where it's bipartisan. You're talking about the institution. There's hope. It might be false hope, but at least for a day, there's hope. And once again, there's drama on the Republican side. The vote is now 101-94. As the votes continue to be cast, we'll continue to follow that. Other news today we're going to talk about on the Democratic side. Well, I mean, that this applies to Republicans and Democrats on the House speakership, but obviously it's the Republicans' issue here. They're the majority party. It's their job to elect a speaker. On the Democratic side, news that we should have probably talked about yesterday, but it was a busy news day yesterday as well. Chuck Schumer, the Democratic leader in the United States Senate, has endorsed Wisconsin Democrat Ben Wickler in the race for Democratic National Committee chair. We're going to talk a little bit about that, what that could mean for the state of Wisconsin and Democrats nationwide moving forward. Also in hour 2, going to have a What's Worse for you. Your chance to weigh in on the trivial matters of the day. Well, maybe not so trivial. We'll see. And then at 1:34, our friend and ongoing contributor Peter Rapine, managing editor of EPOM's World, is going to begin with a more humorous look at the weekend review. Actual humans doing actual goofy stuff. Also, try to get to a little sports today as well. Did you watch, Zomers, did you watch the Sugar Bowl last night?
I did not.
It was a heck of a game. Georgia coming in, of course, thought to be the winner of the SEC, the big, powerful SEC. And Notre Dame took it to them. Notre Dame won 23-10 to eliminate Georgia. Notre Dame goes on now, and they will face Penn State in the Orange Bowl and Texas. SEC champion. No, I'm sorry, I got that turned around. Georgia was the SEC champion. Texas runner-up. So it's going to be Texas taking on the Ohio State University. So at the Final Four, you get two Big Ten teams, Ohio State and Penn State. Ohio State taking on Texas in the Cotton Bowl, and Penn State taking on Notre Dame in the Orange Bowl. Now, you would think the Cotton Bowl being played in Texas, the Longhorns would have an advantage, but boy, Ohio State looked unstoppable against Oregon. So we'll see how that transpires as well. So there your Final Four set up for next week. It is Texas taking on, for the first game on Friday or Thursday, it'll be Penn State taking on Notre Dame in the Orange Bowl, and then Texas taking on Ohio State on Friday in the Cotton Bowl. The winners of those two will face each other a week later for the national championship game. And, of course, the Packers play this Sunday coming up, taking on the Bears. Broadcast time, 10 a.m. on select stations of Civic Media. As Letterman likes to say, I hope one of your stations has been selected. It has been. If you're in Richland Center, Park Falls, or Racine, Kenosha. Kickoff around noon. And then tonight, across many of our Civic Media stations, Wisconsin Badger men's basketball gets back underway, taking on the Iowa Hawkeyes in the Kohl Center. 5 p.m. broadcast start for that one. Looking forward to watching that. That can be heard in Amory, Wisconsin Rapids, Racine, Kenosha, and Richland Center. And also the Badger Sports, of course, can be streamed live and for free on the Civic Media app. If you don't have it, download it today at your Apple or Android device. Type in Civic at the search engine, the search bar, Civic Media. It'll pop up. Takes less than a minute. It is free. It's what Gail King at CBS calls a deal. There you go. So that's where we're at right now as far as things coming up on Civic Media. Again, the vote continues right now for Speaker of the House. The current count is 128 Johnson, 115 Jeffries. Johnson can only lose one additional vote, as one member has already said they are a firm no. So far, 2 of the members on the fence have voted for Johnson. 3 of the members on the fence are holdouts. Again, not voting, not officially abstaining, just, I don't know, stepped out to the powder room or what have you. Some high drama indeed in Washington with very serious implications. Going to keep track of it. Talk more about what's going on with the Democrats and Ben Wickler. Don't go anywhere. It's the Todd Allbaugh Show for a Friday on the Civic Media Radio Network.
McDonald Rivet. Jeffries. McDowell. Johnson. McGarvey.
Do you want me to have this on and up?
Jeffries. McGovern.
No, I'm listening to them. Thank you.
Including Paul Gosar of Arizona, Andy Harris of Maryland, Andy Biggs of Arizona, Michael Cloud of Texas, Andrew Clyde of Georgia, Manu Raju. Do we have any idea why they are doing this? Why they are just not voting?
What are you listening to?
CNN.
Okay.
They wanted to push for Chip Roy to be chairman of the very powerful House Rules Committee, which determines what legislation can come to the floor. An incredibly important position. Something that simply Mike Johnson would not go. In fact, it would cause a revolt from many of the other other members of the House Republican Conference who would not want Roy in that position. We'll see if that's what they're asking for. But the moment those members are staying quiet. Now, Jake, those 5 members will have to make a decision by the end of this, because if they don't vote, then it will lower the overall voting threshold. Because remember, this is the majority of the members who are present and voting for a specific candidate. If they're not there, it lowers the threshold. If they lower it too much, they can actually accidentally elect Hakeem Jeffries as the next Speaker of the House, which of course Republicans don't
What?
want to do. So expect these members ultimately to make a decision on how to proceed here, because at the end of this roll call vote, they're going to have to make a decision. Vote for another candidate altogether.
We got about 20 seconds.
Mike Johnson wants to make it.
Pursuing truth wherever it may lead and having fun doing it. Welcome back to the Todd Allbaugh Show on the Civic Media Radio Network. Glad to have you along on a TGIF edition. Friday, January 3rd, 2025. 21 now past the hour of 12 noon as we are keeping track in real time live from the House of Representatives in the nation's capital, Washington, D.C., as the vote is underway for Speaker of the House between Representative Mike Johnson, the incumbent House Speaker, Republican of Louisiana, and Democratic leader Hakeem Jeffries of New York. The vote right now, 151 for Johnson, 138 for Jeffries. You say, well, he's got it in the bag then. No. Because we can tell you now, in real time, Representative Thomas Massey of Kentucky did not vote for Mike Johnson. He voted for Representative Tom Emmer instead. Massey said earlier he would not vote for Johnson to keep the job, and he kept his word. That means that Johnson can only lose one more member and keep the job or go to another vote. Here's the deal. In addition to Massey, who has voted for someone else, so he's a Republican that's already gone in terms of Johnson, 3 members, and now I believe it's up to 5 in real time, 5 members have skipped their turn to vote, putting the chamber into suspense about whether Mike Johnson could secure the votes for chamber on the first ballot for Speaker. So far, Andy Biggs, Andrew Clyde, Michael Cloud, and 2 more were silent where their names were called, though they'll have another chance to vote at the end of roll call. But here's the deal. You got to be careful when you play with fire, because they've already voted present in the quorum call. So that means that they're technically there. So the number of votes to become Speaker is at a threshold. If those 5 people, Republicans, who have not voted yet when their names are called, if they just never, if they don't say anything, it is, again, I think what's happening here is these members, if you want to know what's going on, these members are saying they're children, they're kindergartners who are folding their arms and saying, look, this is what I want, Speaker Johnson. So either give this to me or I'm not going to vote for you. If those 5 members, Republicans, don't vote at the end, Hakeem Jeffries, if all the Democrats stick together, Hakeem Jeffries could be elected Speaker of the House. Do I think that's going to happen? Probably not. But it gets real tricky. So what's going on behind the scenes in the hallways of Congress right now, you have Speaker Johnson's staff furiously trying to negotiate with staff of these narcissistic 5 members of the House to give them what they want in order to vote for Johnson so that Hakeem Jeffries doesn't become Speaker here in a few minutes. Wouldn't that just be the cat, do you know what? If these people mess around, these Republicans then find out. So and again, I'm sorry if you're not into this, but this is the kind of stuff that I love. The drama of politics. This is, people in the writer's room for the West Wing and all this. This is where Andy Sorkin, this is where they get it from. It's based on stuff that actually happens.
Well, and since you've been in the room for at some level for these kind of events, you understanding it makes it a lot easier for someone like me to understand.
Well, I appreciate that. I hope it does. But you watch it on TV, you're like, well, what's going on? This is what's going on. That these five Republican members of the House of Representatives are trying to get something. They want a committee chairmanship. They want, something promised in the next budget. I'll say this. To his credit, Speaker Johnson so far has said he's not going to make the deal. And you say, well, why not? Here's why. Because if these 5 yahoos that are holding out so far 5, if you make a deal with them and concede on something, particularly something like a chairmanship or whatever, then if you give it to one person, well, then you've got now you've opened the floodgates and you're open for business, as they say. And then everybody's going to want something. So instead of caving in, Johnson's just saying, at least publicly, now there might be deals going on behind the scenes, particularly for pieces of legislation where Johnson's staff will say, we'll guarantee you that we'll get this bridge in your district. We'll bury it in some omnibus bill, which would probably go fairly unnoticed. But a committee chairmanship or a spot on a committee, that's pretty hard to cover up. People are going to know that something went down if that happens. So we shall see. We shall see what happens there. Going to continue to monitor it. Right now, what's the vote? 160. It's tied 168 between Johnson and Jeffries on the first ballot for Speaker of the House. So far now it says apparently, and a part of this is difficult to get in real time here, but on the tally at least, there are now 2 votes for someone else on the tally sheet. So I'm looking up here. So far 5 members have skipped the vote. Andy Briggs, Andrew Clyde, Michael Cloud, Paul Gosar, and Andy Harris were all silent when their names are called. Well, they will have another chance to vote at the end of the call. Mr. Zommers, do you have an update? Now 3.
Yes, and Thomas Massey of Kentucky voted for Tom Emmer. Ralph Norman of South Carolina voted for Jim Jordan.
Wow. And now
I don't see the third one yet, but it should show up here shortly.
Now there is a third. So this is breaking news. Mike Johnson, Speaker of the House of Representatives, will fail to be reelected as Speaker on the first ballot. And many in Washington, including I was watching earlier, Patrick McHenry. Remember him? He was the guy who was the temporary Speaker of the House for all practical terms after Mike Johnson had the vacate vote and was thrown, or not Mike Johnson, Kevin McCarthy. After Kevin McCarthy got thrown out, there was that 20-day-ish period where Patrick McHenry was the Speaker until they elected Mike Johnson. McHenry was saying earlier on CNN that he was predicting that Johnson would win it on the first ballot. And obviously McHenry is plugged in. So this comes as somewhat of a surprise to those quote-unquote pundits in the know. Mr. Zommers.
The third, according to New York Times, is Keith Self, from Texas, who voted present.
So there you go. Mike Johnson on track to fail in his bid for re-election on the first ballot. Most likely will go at least to a second one. Do we have another 15 ballot run here?
I hope not.
High drama on a Friday afternoon. We're going to keep track of it. Going to change gears a little bit as we keep track of this and talk about Democrats and Ben Wickler on the Allbaugh Show for a Friday on the Civic Media Radio Network.
Great conversation, 92.7 WMDX.
Local radio for you and your community. It's Civic Media's mission with stations across Wisconsin.
Find your favorites at civicmedia.us.
Yeah, and then there's still all the blank
January
ones of people who
13th
haven't come
and
back yet.
14th
Yeah,
are the
thank
dates
you.
for the Wisconsin
Good job on
Agribusiness
that.
Classic, put on by the Wisconsin Agribusiness Association. A wealth of knowledge coming your way on all things crop protection.
Keith Self has
nutrient
switched from
management,
present
and
to
new
Byron
farm
Donalds.
technology.
Oh, yes,
WABA's new
Byron Donalds.
Executive Director
I don't know
Grace
who that
Howell
is,
previews
but-
this
He
year's
is
event, starting with
the
its
big
new
trumper from
location.
Florida.
After we left Alliant Energy Center in Madison for a number of years, we kind of thought it was time to take a fresh start and a new approach to the show. So we've moved to the Kalahari in the Dells. This will be our first year in the Dells. We've got a lot of good industry topics that we'll be speaking on, workforce development being one of them to kind of tie into our priorities for 2025. And then we partner with UW Extension where they provide some educational offerings as well. So just kind of looking forward to hopefully some enhanced excitement and kind of just a new feel, a new layout for the show, and hopefully the momentum stays increased for future years.
Again, the Wisconsin Agribusiness Classic going
And so
on
far, only
January
one
13th
Democrat
and
has a blank
14th
spot
at
next
the
to their
Kalahari
base where
Convention
they
Center in
aren't
the
there or
Wisconsin
something.
Dells.
That's Andre
Grace
Carson.
Howe
All right,
is the
thank you.
executive director of the Wisconsin Agribusiness Association. Stick around for a look at your midday commodity markets coming up.
There goes Pam Yankee across Wisconsin in her suburban truck. Thanks to Equity Livestock Cooperative, marketing your livestock, financing your operation, and supporting the livestock community since 1922. And to Cleary Building Corp. Cleary
Chip
Building
Roy
Corp. Build with
hasn't showed
pride
up yet.
Before the Shamrock is applied.
Interesting.
Explore clearybuilding.com today. Keep up with Pam at MidwestFarmReport.com and on Facebook and Instagram.
Giving back. It's at the heart of the Wisconsin farmer, and it starts with supporting the backbones of our community. That's why the Wisconsin Soybean Marketing Board invests in soy foam for our firefighters. Soy foam TF 1122 is the first and only firefighting foam green screen certified at the gold level. As a PFAS-free firefighting foam, it's safe for you and the environment. A safe future for your community. Thanks to your soy checkoff. Learn more at wisoybean.org.
Ahead of the weekend, grain markets are taking a hit. From Chicago, cash corn is down 8 1/4 cents, trading at $4.51 1/4. New crop corn is down 6 cents at $4.40 1/2. Cash soybeans are down 18 1/4 cents at $9.81 1/4, and November new crop beans are trading 20 cents lower at $10.08 a bushel. July new crop wheat is down 13 1/2 cents at $5.51 a bushel. The January Class 3 milk contract is trading up a penny at $20.37 a hundredweight. The February contract is down 6 cents at $20.42. For the Midwest Farm Report, I'm Stephanie Hoff.
Your news, conversations, and a whole lot of fun. It's all on your local Civic Media radio station or the Civic Media app.
Mostly sunny today and cold, with high temperatures tapping 20 degrees and wind chills really feeling more like the single digits, as winds are whipping out of the northwest, gusting around 25 miles per hour. They won't quit tonight, so it'll really be feeling near 10 below. I'm meteorologist Brittany Merlot. Right now, it's 17.
If you're living with dry age-related macular degeneration or dry AMD, you may be at risk for developing geographic atrophy or GA. GA can be unpredictable and progress rapidly, leading to irreversible vision loss. Now there's something you can do to
slow it down and get it going slower.
Izervay is proven to slow GA progression.
Izervay gets GA going slower.
Izervay or avacincaptad pagel is a prescription eye injection used to treat GA. Don't take it if you have an infection or active swelling in or around your eye. Izervay can cause eye infection, retinal detachment, or increased risk of wet AMD. Izervay may temporarily increase eye pressure. Your vision may be impaired after an eye injection or exam. Don't delay. Ask your doctor about Izervay today.
20 seconds. What?
Hang on.
Freedom!
having fun doing it. Welcome back to the Todd Allbaugh Show on the Civic Media Radio Network. 34 minutes now past the hour of 12 noon on Friday, January 3rd, 2025. Taking your phone calls as well. 855-752-4842. 855-752-4842. You can text us on the Civic Media app. We are following in real time right now the election for Speaker of the House in Washington, D.C., between Mike Johnson, Republican incumbent of Louisiana, and House Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries, Democrat of New York. And we can report to you now that at least there are 3 members of the Republican caucus who have voted for someone else. And that means because of the makeup of the House, Mike Johnson could only afford to lose 2. He has lost 3. That means that he will not be reelected as Speaker on the first ballot. I want to break this down and for a second here and tell you what this means, because obviously now Hakeem Jeffries is going to receive more votes than Mike Johnson. And you say, well, that means Jeffries is Speaker. Not so fast, as Lee Corso says on College Game Day. Because Hakeem Jeffries will not have a majority of those present. You have to have a majority of those present in order to in order to be the Speaker. So here's what's going on behind the scenes. Johnson is trying to get these other people who are holding out to vote, say, fine, if you don't want to vote for me, vote for somebody else. Because if they don't vote, that's where, if they simply vote present or don't vote, then Hakeem Jeffries does have the majority. 175 years, the majority party has never not had, to use a double negative, the speakership. Do I think that's going to happen today? Probably not. But look, in today's era, nothing surprises me anymore. However, it would be unexpected. So here's where we're at right now. We have Jeffries with 214, Johnson with 208. 3 members so far are abstaining or have voted for someone else. So and listening during the break a little bit, or looking at some other commentary, Patrick McHenry, former Republican congressman who served temporarily as Speaker, he said of what's going on right now in Washington, D.C. in the House, the Republican caucus, he said, quote, it's like a dog marking their territory. These members are peeing and letting Jeffries know, or letting Johnson know that they're in charge and what they want. I thought that was pretty good. That's a pretty good analogy. These Republican congressmen are like dogs peeing around the Capitol, marking their territory, saying we're in charge, this is our territory, and this is what we want. So there you go. We shall see what happens. Going to continue to follow it. Chuck, the Chuckster from Racine, listening via WMDX, says, U.S. House vote for Speaker. What about Texas Representative Kay Granger, who has been absent the last 6 months, living her life in a Texas memory care unit? Is she voting? Should she? This is important business, and America trusts and expects Congress to get things right, not unlike whether it's roughing the kicker and 15-yard penalty or just running into him at the 5-yard line. Here's what I can tell you, Chuckster. And great question, by the way. Representative Kay Granger, Republican of Texas, she did not run for re-election. So, yes, it's true she did not show up to work, missed a bunch of votes the last few months of her term because she's in memory care. But she was not on the ballot to run for re-election, so her term technically expired today at noon Eastern time. So this vote for representative for Speaker is only those newly elected members for this new Congress. So that's what's going on right now. It's high drama. It's rather fun to watch, if I have to say, in my opinion, because these things matter. And we shall see. Again, 855-752-4842, 855-752-4842. If you would like to weigh in on this, vote as it continues. So the looks like the first round of voting is done so far.
Yeah, it looks like the only holdouts who didn't vote at all are Andrew Clyde from Georgia and Paul Gosar from Arizona.
All right. So that means the vote was 214 Jeffries, 211 Johnson, and 3 other people voted for someone else. So Johnson is not elected, but because those other members apparently came back in and did vote, and neither Hakeem Jeffries is not elected either. So anyway, we'll continue to follow this ongoing drama. And looking at Kevin McCarthy's face right now on TV, he is not
Mike Johnson.
Or Mike Johnson, pardon me, Mike Johnson. It looks very much like Kevin McCarthy's face a few months ago. Not happy at all. Here's some news from Wisconsin Public Radio. Chuck Schumer has endorsed Senator Chuck Schumer, Democratic leader, still the Democratic leader, at least for a couple more hours over in the Senate, has endorsed Wisconsin Democratic Chair Ben Wickler for the race in the DNC chair. Story here from Wisconsin Public Radio. As he vies to lead the Democratic National Committee, Wisconsin Democratic Party Chair Ben Wickler has gained an endorsement from the top Democrat in the U.S. Senate. In a statement yesterday morning, Majority Leader Chuck Schumer, Democrat of New York, hailed Wickler, quote, as one of the best state party chairs in the country and said he's what Democrats need right now, unquote, on a national level. Schumer went on to say, quote, Ben possesses all the qualities Democrats across the country are looking for in our next DNC chair. He's a tenacious organizer, one of the best organizers in the country, a proven fundraiser, a sharp communicator, and able to reach out to all segments of the Democratic Party. Most importantly, he knows how to win, unquote. Now, that is absolutely true. If you look at the turnaround in terms of Democratic wins in the state of Wisconsin, it really began when Ben Wickler became chairman of the state party here in Wisconsin. Wickler has chaired the Democratic Party of Wisconsin since 2019. Before that, he worked as a senior advisor and Washington director at the progressive advocacy group MoveOn.org. On December 1st, weeks after the Republicans won the presidency and control of the U.S. House and Senate, Wickler announced his intention to run to become the next chair of the Democratic National Party. In an interview with Wisconsin Today, Wickler likened Republicans' recent victories nationally to Wisconsin in 2010, when former Republican Governor Scott Walker was elected and Republicans controlled all branches of state government. Wickler said the Democratic Party of Wisconsin was successful in pushing back with the elections of Democratic Governor Tony Evers in 2018 and liberal Wisconsin Supreme Court Justice Janet Protasewicz in 2023, which put liberals in control of the court for the first time in 15 years. That led to Republican-drawn state legislative voting maps being struck down by the court and new maps drawn by Evers being passed into law early last year. And while Republican President-elect Donald Trump won Wisconsin in November, Wickler has pointed to Democratic U.S. Senator Tammy Baldwin keeping her seat, along with state Democrats flipping 14 seats in the Wisconsin legislature. What are your thoughts on Ben Wickler? What are your thoughts on Chuck Schumer endorsing Ben Wickler for chair of the DNC? 855-752-4842, 855-752-4842. Or you can text us on the Civic Media app. Look, I said early on, this would be one of the smartest questions you could possibly, or one of the smartest things Democrats could possibly do. Right? Elect Ben Wickler as their leader. Because he's gotten it done. Here's another quote from this story in the Wisconsin Public Radio article. Wickler said, quote, "We need to have a national party that can organize in the fight for working people in every state across this country with the same kind of intensity and focus that we've been able to bring to the work in Wisconsin, especially over these last few years, and building on years of work before that," unquote. Wickler said he wants to unite the Democratic National Committee in focusing on all elections, not just presidential contests. Wickler said, quote, "This is not about showing up every 4 years. It's about a permanent campaign. And I think we've shown that in Wisconsin right now. We have our state Supreme Court race this spring, Susan Crawford versus Brad Schimmel. That is a must-win race, and we're going to fight to win that. And we should be doing the same thing in every state," unquote. And here's maybe the line of the article here in the Wisconsin Public Radio news story. It says, after a bruising year for Democrats, Wickler said the DNC needs to clarify its message by, quote, "using language that people actually use in real life, not just what feels like a political ad," unquote, while meeting young voters where they are on platforms like YouTube, TikTok, Discord, and podcasts. Let me read that quote again, because it's so refreshing to hear a leader of Democrats say this. Wickler said, quote, that the DNC needs to clarify its message by, quote, "using language that people actually use in real life, not just what feels like a political ad," unquote. Be relevant. And look, my grandmother was a dean of University College. I'm all for academia. I'm all for higher ed. But too often, the Democratic Party leaders and some of their followers like to get into academia speak. And the low-hanging fruit on this one is the word Latinx. Instead of using the common phrase that Latino and Hispanic people actually use, which are Latino, Latina, people, predominantly white people on college universities, the ivory towers, said, no, we need to make a word up called Latinx because it includes everyone of every type of, right down the list. Nobody uses it within the Latino. Very few people use that in the Latino community. And a lot of people find it offensive and off-putting that a white person came up with a politically correct term for their culture. But that's just the low-hanging fruit. You can replicate that through a lot of very high-end academia progressive speech. Meanwhile, Donald Trump talks like the guy at the end of the bar. And if you think that's just a former Republican having that perception, i.e. me, I am not. I mean, clearly Ben Wickler gets it. When he's been on this program, he doesn't talk like an academia politically correct person. He talks like a real guy. Brian Schatz, Democratic U.S. Senator from Hawaii, and a great article by Politico, is saying the same thing. The headline in Politico says, Brian Schatz to Democrats, please stop with quote-unquote center and quote-unquote making space. This gets more into it. He's basically saying, I'm paraphrasing now, but he's basically saying, Democrats have started using the word center as a verb. What we're going to do here is we're going to center issue X. Nobody talks like that.
It doesn't mean anything to anybody outside your group.
Right. That's a much better way to put it. There are people that talk like that, but it's not broad and it's not appealing to the average voter across the state of Wisconsin. What do you think about this? Are Democrats speaking correctly to the majority of the electorate? 855-752-4842, 855-752-4842. Back with more on the other side, including is the ongoing race for Speaker of the House. Johnson fails to get the vote on the first round. We're going to round 2 on the Civic Media Radio Network.
Real news and
great conversation. 92.7 WMDX. The John and Gordy Show.
Well, Bob Woodward, ever since All the President's Men, along with Carl Bernstein, they basically blew the cover off of the Watergate scandal.
That's right, with Deep Throat.
And that's a great movie, by the way.
Deep Throat? I saw that.
No, I meant All the President's Men, but thank you for that. All right.
Linda Lovelace was a great performer.
Weekday mornings 6 till 8 on 92.7 WMDX and the Civic Media app. Matt Nair on air. This shouldn't be a thing.
Hot Dr. Pepper is the hottest holiday drink, but is it any good?
Jane, I'd like to answer that question.
Yes.
No. Have you ever had a hot soda in your life?
Yes, they're terrible. You can also do apparently 80% eggnog and 20% Dr. Pepper.
Get out of my country.
Matt Nair on air. Weekdays at 11 on 92.7 WMDX and the Civic Media app.
Uh-oh, Brad's buzzed.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, he's starting with the loops. And now a speech.
I just want to say that friendship is about heart and brain. Who's with me?
Good thing is, he knows when he's buzzed.
And my brain is saying, when it's time to go home, somebody call me a ride.
Love that guy.
Me too.
Know your buzzed warning signs? Call for a ride when it's time to go home. Buzz driving is drunk driving. A message from NHTSA.
This whole thing about using academic language instead of talking like a normal person really ties into the what's worse for today, I think.
That's how it feels when you're struggling with your mental health. But you don't have to feel alone. Find more information at loveyourmindtoday.org.
Pursuing truth wherever it may lead and having fun doing it. Welcome back to the Todd Allbaugh Show, the Civic Media Radio Network. 9 now before the hour of 1 o'clock on this Friday, January 3rd, 2025. Coming up at hour 2, a little what's worse for you. Your chance to call in. And Zomer said this one kind of ties into what we're talking about right now. So we'll talk about that. And also Peter Rapine at the bottom of next hour. A little lighter look at the week in review. Again, updating this, Speaker Mike Johnson has lost his bid in the first round of voting to retain his gavel and Speaker of the House. That means we're going to at least a round 2. We'll continue to update it in real time or have it up on the screen. Right now, you see Marjorie Taylor Greene doing some lobbying on the House floor with members who voted against Johnson. Now, is that the person you want lobbying for you? I'm not sure.
I certainly wouldn't think so.
I'm
Yeah,
not sure.
I mean, like a minute or so ago, Mike Johnson left the building, or at least the room. So I don't know if he's doing some private chats or if he's like, I need to
probably
take
some,
the edge
probably
off.
some private arm ringing. Maybe making a call to Trump to have them call it. There's
Right,
all kinds
something
of
like that.
all kinds of things in the cloakroom and going on right now to try to get votes. Talking about a little bit about this article from Wisconsin Public Radio. Chuck Schumer, Democratic leader in the Senate, endorsing Wisconsin Democrat Ben Wickler for the race for the DNC, and Democratic U.S. Senator Brian Schatz in a great interview with Politico. Came out a couple of days ago, saying that Democrats need to stop with center and making space. Talking about language. I'm going to read you a little bit of this. Your phone calls welcome, 855-752-4842, 855-752-4842. I'll tell you what I'm cutting through this just for time. But the interviewer in Politico asked Senator Schatz, Democrat of Hawaii, said Bernie, meaning Bernie Sanders, is going to carry the banner for Bernie no matter if who wins, no matter if you win 400 electoral votes or lose 400 electoral votes. And Senator Schatz said, right, because if we won, that's because Kamala adopted the 5 things that I demanded she adopted. And likewise, the center left folks who want to blame all this on pro-Palestinian activists or police reform activists. That is all BS to me. I cleaned it up for radio. The third piece that I think I know is the question of language. And of course, all these overlap with each other. But I saw an argument online that Latinx is the easy one, and it's also easy to push back on because it's just the fact that you can scarcely find a politician who says Latinx. But that's not the point. The point is we have a whole language that's maybe not offensive or irritating, but definitely unfamiliar to regular people. Again, these are the words of U.S. Democratic Senator Brian Schatz of Hawaii. He goes on to say, quote, I think Kamala did a really good job of focusing on middle-class concerns, but I remember her saying, I'm going to center the needs of the working class. And I thought to myself, I don't know anyone in the world who says center. I know people who say, in politics who say center. I know people in academia. I know people in advocacy who say center. But centering the needs or making space for all of that is a clear indication that you are not normal. And I put myself in that category. By definition, I'm a coastal progressive. And I'm going to skid. Here's the paragraph that I thought was really, really insightful by Brian Schatz, Democratic senator from Hawaii. He said, quote, but I think this question of language goes pretty deep. And it goes to not just being careful not to say things that are egregiously weird sounding, but it's also the way we interact with advocacy groups. I remember saying I was for a cessation of hostilities in Israel and Palestine. And people said, why don't you say ceasefire? I'm thinking that's literally the same thing. I remember saying I was for a big, bold climate bill. And people said, why don't you say Green New Deal? And this idea that there are magic words that we must be forced to say defines progressivism and political courage by essentially saying whatever a bunch of activists want us to say as opposed to what's just doing the right thing. And I think there are a bunch of people who see that what we're doing as performative for the exact reason. But that's also just alienating. The magic word thing has got to go away, unquote. The words from Brian Schatz, Democrat of Hawaii. And it goes right back to what Trygve Olsen says time and again in this program. There are people who want to be in politics and there are people who want to do. And Brian Schatz is a Democrat who clearly wants to do. And he's basically saying, let's forget about all the, somebody who wants to be or organizations that want to be and be the word police and use certain words. Let's just get stuff done. And it's so refreshing to hear people like Ben Wickler and Brian Schatz, who, by the way, have very little of any white in their hair. Younger people who get it. And these are not quote-unquote conservative folks, I don't think. But they're more enlightened people who understand that if their party, the Democrats, are going to connect with a majority or a plurality of voters, you have to sound like and talk like the people that you want to vote for you and not alienate them. 855-752-4842, 855-752-4842. Welcome your phone calls, welcome your texts on the subject. And another leader the Democrats need to listen to more, in my opinion, Hakeem Jeffries, who's clearly getting it done today. He kept all of his members on the ranch. Nobody went and voted absentee. Nobody voted present. Nobody voted for somebody else. All the Democratic members in the House have voted for Hakeem Jeffries. That cannot be said for Republicans and Mike Johnson. Mike Johnson has failed to become Speaker of the House in the first ballot, going to ballot number 2. Gonna have that. What's worse? And Peter Rapine. Don't go anywhere. Hour 2 is straight ahead. The Todd Allbaugh Show on the Civic Media Radio Network.
News and great conversation. 92.7 WMDX. John Peterson and Gordy Young.
It's so interesting seeing so many kids on the house floor. Like not in the shot right now, but
and an earlobe.
now you can see some. It's just like, I wonder what they think of this.
The John and Gordy Show.
Well, Bob Woodward, ever since All the President's Men, along with Carl Bernstein, they basically blew the cover off of the Watergate scandal.
That's right, with Deep Throat.
And that's a great movie, by the way.
Deep Throat? I saw that.
No, I meant All the President's Men, but thank you for that. All right.
Linda Lovelace was a great performer.
Weekday mornings 6 till 8 on 92.7 WMDX and the Civic Media app. You can always continue the conversation on social media. Share your thoughts when you find and follow Civic Media on Facebook, X, and Instagram. This is 92.7 WMDX Columbus, Madison's home for real news and great conversation. A Civic Media station.
This is a special report from ABC News, House Speaker election. I'm Mike Dubusky. Louisiana Republican Mike Johnson is on track to lose the first ballot in his bid for the House speakership, with Republicans Thomas Massie and Ralph Norman voting for other candidates. ABC's Jay O'Brien says the Massie vote was expected.
There's already one Republican who's come out and said he's a firm no vote, Thomas Massie, who says despite Donald Trump endorsing Johnson and doubling down on that endorsement, it's not going to move his vote. Here's what he told me.
Are you defying Donald Trump here by voting no?
No, I'm trying to help him. Look, I did.
He said back Johnson.
8 years ago, he said back Paul Ryan. I was the only one that voted against Paul Ryan, and we see how that turned out for the president. I'm trying to help him out here.
Massie instead cast his ballot for Tom Emmer of Minnesota. Norman voted for Jim Jordan. Johnson earlier told ABC News that losing the first ballot is nothing and that he's in this for the long haul. This is ABC News.
You just missed, Johnson said that, not on here, but in ABC News. They said Johnson said losing the first ballot means nothing, and he's in this for the long haul.
Or the Civic Media app.
I love it.
For 92.7 WMDX News, I'm Savannah Tomei Olson. Mortgage rates have climbed again in a hot real estate market. As of yesterday, the national average for a 30-year fixed-rate mortgage is just
Marjorie
under
Taylor
7%.
Greene on the phone and trying to get some business done. Like you mentioned earlier, if Marjorie Taylor Greene is on the phone with me, I feel like I'm less likely to do whatever.
The number of mortgage applications dropped nearly 22%, but that can be common for that time of year. Are you already feeling a little discouraged with your New Year's resolution? I am. I didn't even start on time. We can all have big dreams for making our lives and ourselves better, but lots of times we still have the exact same roadblocks and difficulties we did in 2024. Here's Lisa Hale.
We've all set the impossible New Year's resolutions to lose 50 pounds or to give up sweets completely. Lakeland Care Plus Consulting's organizational impact coach, Emily Wright, says to make your goals achievable. But remember, Rome was not built in a day.
The goal is for a year. So like if we're 2 weeks in and we forgot what we wrote down, on January 1st when we were totally pumped writing down our goals, that's okay. That's all right. That's where you can bring in self-compassion. Be like, this is something that's important to me and it's going to be a journey. So that's why the goal is cool to have. That gives us direction to aim towards something, but having those baby steps, having the processes in place because it's a journey.
I'm Lisa Hale for Civic Media News.
And the Dane County Farmers Market returns this weekend. After wrapping things up on the square, the event moved to Monona Terrace for the holiday market. They took the weekend between Christmas and New Year's off, but now the late winter market begins. It's every Saturday at the Garver Feed Mill on the east side from 8 a.m. to noon. It runs through April 5th. Then the nation's largest producers-only farmers market will return to the Capitol Square. I'm Savannah Tomei Olson. You're listening to 92.7 WMDX News.
It's the Packers and the Bears. Hi, I'm Mike Clemens with sports. The Packers host the Bears Sunday. Green Bay has beat Chicago now 11 times in a row. 3 Packers players named to the Pro Bowl, Rashawn Gary, and 2 free agents who joined the team this year, Josh Jacobs and safety Xavier McKinney.
Definitely special. Obviously this organization bringing in 2 great guys, 2 great leaders, and helping be a part of, already successful team, and just taking us that much further, taking another step further.
NBA, the Bucks try to make a comeback, scoring 20 unanswered points in the fourth quarter, but lost at home to the Nets, 113-110. Doc Rivers asked, have the Bucks played the right way since their win in the NBA Cup?
Yeah, well, honestly, I thought we have played the right way overall. Since Vegas, we've been shorthanded. There's not a lot of nights like this where we play offense like the way we played tonight. So, yeah.
The Bucks host the Trailblazers 7 o'clock tomorrow night. With sports, I'm Mike Clemens.
This is your local Civic Media radio station. Want to hear even more? Anytime? Find all of it at civicmedia.us.
Mostly sunny today and cold, with high temperatures tapping 20 degrees and wind chills really feeling more like the single digits, as winds are whipping out of the northwest, gusting around 25 miles per hour. They won't quit tonight, so it'll really be feeling near 10 below. I'm meteorologist Brittany Merlot. Right now, it's 17.
Are you prepared for an emergency or disaster? Because it's not a matter of if, but when. Don't find yourself saying,
when the storm rolls in, my time to find a pet-friendly evacuation center will have run out.
The scorching heat wave will leave me powerless to cool my insulin.
I'll face a hurricane without meds. Now that's a tough pill to swallow.
Let's prepare so we all have a better story to tell. Get started at ready.gov/older adults. Brought to you by FEMA and the Ad Council.
The John and Gordy Show.
Well, Bob Woodward, ever since All the President's Men, along with Carl Bernstein, they basically blew the cover off of the Watergate scandal.
That's right, with Deep Throat.
And that's a great movie, by the way.
Deep Throat? I saw that.
No, I meant All the President's Men.
About 30 seconds.
Thank you.
Got a good comment on YouTube.
Live from the Civic Media World Headquarters in Madison, Wisconsin, it's the Todd Allbaugh Show. And now, pursuing truth wherever it may lead, here's your host, Todd Allbaugh.
Across Wisconsin on the Civic Media Radio Network and streaming worldwide on the Civic Media app. Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Todd Allbaugh, along with our outstanding producer, Mr. Aaron Zommers, on the board. It is 6 now, past the hour of 1 o'clock. Welcome into hour number 2 of the big program on Friday, TGIF, January 3rd, 2025. It is a great day to be Wisconsinite. Sunny skies through most of the state. A little cool, a little winter cool down here in January. But hey, that's Wisconsin winters, as it turns out. Glad to have you along here for hour number 2. Another big hour, very fluid here on a Friday. Lots going on. Coming up in a moment, what's worse? Your chance to call and text in on the question of the day. Also, then at 1:34, Peter Rapine, managing editor of EPOM's World, will be in with a lighter look at the week in review. And also, we're following the dramatic events happening in Washington, D.C. right now, as the United States House of Representatives meeting, the first formal meeting of the new House, trying to elect a speaker. And on the first vote, Representative Mike Johnson, Republican incumbent of Louisiana, has lost to Democrat Hakeem Jeffries of New York 216 to 215, with 3 Republican members voting for someone other than Johnson. So a couple of questions. You say, well, Johnson got the majority of the votes. Why didn't he win? And to go along with that, over the break there, got a text as well. Great question from one of our great listeners, Dave in New Berlin, asking, how can Hakeem Jeffries win? Is it by a majority? Yes, you nailed it. It's not a simple majority, according to House rules. It's a majority of members present. So there are 435 members of the House of Representatives. The Matt Gaetz seat of Florida is vacant because he resigned. And even though he got elected to this Congress, he said, no, I'm not going to be there. So his seat is, for all intent and purposes, vacant. I'm not sure that he could show up right now and vote. I don't know how that would work. He's working for, the right-wing group OWN right now, has a program there. Wouldn't that be dramatic if he showed up and voted? But for all intent and purposes, there are 434 members present today in a quorum call vote, basically like the roll call. So with 216 for Johnson, 215 for Jeffries, and 3 members voting for someone else, that gets you to 434. That is not a majority of those present. So the way that Hakeem Jeffries could, keyword could, technically become speaker, although I don't think there's any chance it'll happen, is that if a couple more of those holdout Republicans simply didn't vote for anyone, but they were there, they're present, and then that way that would count towards the majority, and that's how kind of Hakeem Jeffries could do a backdoor entry to the speakership. I do not think that will happen. And so they finally, according to reporting I'm seeing, they have finally closed the vote. They can keep it open for an indefinite amount of time because they were trying to get one of those 3 holdouts to change over and vote for Johnson. But apparently they've decided to close the vote. According to reporting I'm seeing, while the first House Speaker vote has not yet been called, Speaker Mike Johnson is on track to lose with the current breakdown, and the House is poised to go immediately to a second vote without a break. House Democratic Whip has sent a notice to its members to return to the floor immediately and be ready for a second roll call. Multiple holdouts ultimately voted for House Speaker Mike Johnson in dramatic fashion after initially skipping their turn in what appeared to be a short-lived protest of the Speaker. 7 Republicans did not vote during the initial roll call. Andy Briggs, Andrew Clyde, Michael Cloud, Paul Gosar, Andy Harris, and Chip Roy, along with Michael Waltz, appeared to accidentally, quote-unquote, miss his turn. At the end of the roll call, all 7 were given a final chance to vote, and all 7 voted for Johnson. One of the holdouts, Clyde, walked down the aisle to speak his vote directly to the clerk, carrying what appeared to be a Bible, no word whether it was a Trump Bible. One of Johnson's whips in his speaker's race, Dusty Johnson, was seen in animated back-and-forth conversation in the back of the room with Roy. High stakes. Speaker Johnson left the House chamber, as Zomer said earlier. It appeared likely that he did not secure the votes to keep him with the gavel on the first ballot, which is what happened. At this point, Johnson needs to flip Representative Thomas Massey, Ralph Norman, or Self, all who did not vote for Johnson. Further complicating matters, Norman and Self had not previously communicated their position to the Speaker, according to multiple GOP sources, so that they knew that Massey was a no. But Norman and Self did not give an indication that they were going to be a holdout, so now you got to go back and find out what these guys want. You got to flip one of them. So we'll keep track of that as this half hour and hour goes on. So far, we see Speaker Johnson on the floor right now, and this is the other cool thing. Normally, we do not see the more candid video on the House floor because C-SPAN cameras have very strict camera shots they're allowed to take because the Speaker sets the rule for those C-SPAN cameras. But because technically there is no Speaker right now, that means C-SPAN gets to do whatever they want. Wouldn't that be fun, Zomers, to be in the control room and control, let's have fun, boys and girls?
Oh, that would be great.
Right? When the producers and engineers get to control the show.
Let's show what's really happening.
Right. Exactly. So that's why we have this shot right now. We can see Speaker Johnson huddling on the back of the House floor with a bunch of people around him, pointing with a pen in animated fashion, talking to somebody. You wouldn't see, and this is why I think there should be deregulation of C-SPAN cameras. We should be allowed to see all this all the time.
I mean, why not?
Right? If you're in the House gallery, if you're there in person, you get to see it. Why not? But anyway, that's what's going on right now in the House of Representatives.
I mean, I think if they did that, it would get a lot more people interested in politics because it has to be reality TV for anyone to care these days, right? Or at least that's how it seems in the era of Donald Trump. And this brings it a lot closer.
Yeah. Patrick in the 608 on MDX, so confused. Has Todd mixed up Jeffries and Johnson a few times here? Maybe once or twice. I apologize. I got a little excited. They both start with J, you understand?
They do.
But here's the vote count right now. On the first vote, to clarify, it was Johnson 216, Jeffries to 15, and 3 Republican members voted for someone else. So although Johnson technically got more votes, he did not win a majority of the members present. So he lost the first ballot. So Johnson needs to flip one of the 3 others to him. That's what needs to happen. Or, and again, this is the far, far outside shot that most likely would never happen, but technically it could, if those 3 members simply did not vote, even though they were present, and all of Jeffrey's people stayed with him, he could technically become Speaker of the majority party. But probably not going to happen. The realistic possibility here in the second round is they're going to try to flip one of those people, one of the 3 Republicans that voted for someone else, and Johnson would win in the second or third ballot. It took Kevin McCarthy, or it was 15 ballots, remember, after Matt Gaetz threw his fit and they threw out Kevin McCarthy. It took 15 ballots to elect Johnson the first time. I mean, he wasn't on all those ballots, to be fair. There were other people being put up at the time. But again, as we said in hour 1, there must be a Congress seated. You can't have you have to have a Speaker and a sworn-in Congress to certify the election results for president on January 6th. So that's why Trump is trying to get people in order on his party. Because, wouldn't that be embarrassing? It wouldn't be the opposition party. It'd be your own party that did you in on certification on January 6th. Not a good look if you're the Republicans. All right, 16 now past the hour. Time once again for What's Worse. Let's go.
This or that, this or that. Then, of course, the choice is yours. You can get with this or you can get with that. You can get with this or you can get with that. You can get with this or you can get with that. I think you can get with this because this is where it's
Time once again for What's Worse. No prize money involved. Only your chance to have your voice heard across the state of Wisconsin on the questions of the day. Not always the most pertinent or important question, but the most interesting. As Barbara Walters used to say, the most fascinating questions. Remember that at the end of the year, it wasn't the most important person of the year. It wasn't the best person. She called her program on ABC the most fascinating people of 2024 or whatever the year was.
I think that's the way to do it. Just like Time Person of the Year confuses people sometimes. It's not best person of the year. It is most newsworthy person of the year.
Right. Whichever they deem most newsworthy. So, all right, here we go. What's worse, arrogance or ignorance? What's worse, arrogance or ignorance? 855-752-4842, 855-752-4842. We'd love to hear from you on this Friday afternoon. You can text your answers in to the text line as well. Simply download the Civic Media app. Go to whatever first 11 stations that we're on. Click it. You'll go over the text icon and text in your answer. Or you can call us. 855-752-4842, 855-752-4842. What's worse, arrogance or ignorance? That's a fascinating question. You know what? And again, I guess we could apply this to ourselves or to people that we hang out with. What's worse? Is it worse to have someone who's just arrogant and always kind of self-centered, or worse to be around people who are just ignorant of the facts and what's going on?
My opinion is, actually, before I share it, Chris and Madison texted in, and he nailed what I was about to say. He says, in my experience, they tend to be very associated traits. So arrogantly ignorant.
that could be the worst.
Is the worst. And I'll have to describe that in a minute because we're about out of time.
All right. Yes, we're going to break here, but give us a call. What's worse, arrogance or ignorance? 855-752-4842, 855-752-4842. Going to continue on with this. We have Peter Rapine at the bottom of the hour and continuing to look at the second vote for Speaker in Washington on the Civic Media Radio Network.
Madison's real news and great conversation. 92.7 WMDX.
Flying Shot Social Club, a perfect blend of cool, casual dining, indoor golf with space for events, craft cocktails, and non-alcoholic drinks too. A hidden gem on Madison's east side. Flying Shot Social Club, open to everyone. FlyingShotSocialClub.com.
Football season is back, and Gabriel the Promoter is ready to help you get the party started. Celebrate in style by booking a $100 round-trip party bus shuttle from Madison to Lambeau Field, complete with all-you-can-drink Miller Lite. Tickets to the game are not included. Don't miss out on the ultimate green and gold experience. Book your spot now. Brought to you by Gabriel Promotes and sponsored by Baldwin Street Grill. Call Gabriel the Promoter today, 414-944-1704, while spots are still available.
I'm Dan Schaefer. Let's recombobulate. As 2024 comes to a close, we're taking our annual look back at the year that was, recapping our most read, most listened to,
Jeff Perry
and
has a
most
good comment
impactful stories of
in
the
support
year.
of ignorance
If you're new
being
to learning
worse.
about the recombobulation area, this would be a great place to start to see what we're all about. This year, we covered the RNC in Milwaukee and the DNC in Chicago and broke stories that made national news along the way. We wrote about the fight for fair maps,
That's very good.
covered
We'll use that,
elections in
Mr.
the
Perry.
state
Well
legislature
done.
like no one else. I wrote opinion columns and feature stories and conducted extended sit-down interviews like one with Senator Tammy Baldwin.
Dave votes
I hosted
present.
podcasts and radio shows and, of course, joined the Civic Media Network, where you've heard me all over the airwaves for the last few months. This last year was discombobulating at times, but we did our best to make sense of it all, and we've got a whole lot more recombobulation in store for the year ahead in 2025.
Find all of Dan's work at the recombobulation area.
Your arrogance blinds you, Master Yoda.
Nicely done, Tom. Welcome back to the Todd Allbaugh Show on the Civic Media Radio Network. 21 now past the hour of 1 o'clock on Friday, January 3rd, 2025. Lots going on. Going to keep you up to date on all of it. A little Emperor Palpatine there. the Lord Palpatine from Star Wars. I like that.
Yes.
The what's worse, arrogance or ignorance? 855-752-4842, 855-752-4842, asking the important question of the day. What do we have here? Steve, listening in Milwaukee on WAUK perhaps, says, in my opinion, arrogance because it is willful. Ignorance, or pardon me, arrogance because it is willful ignorance in most cases.
Right. When somebody, ignorance is way better when somebody can admit that they're wrong. But when they are too arrogant to admit that they're ignorant, that's when we really run into trouble.
Matt in Middleton, listening on MDX, says, both can be comforting and innocent, but in today's world, ignorance is clearly worse, i.e. voting for Trump again. Well, we talked a little bit about that yesterday. I don't necessarily disagree, but I also think there's a larger problem that I don't want to get into right now, which we've talked about before and we'll talk about on future programs. That part of the perceived ignorance, or actual, I guess, real ignorance, is where people are getting their information from, which some people believe is legit information because they only listen to one or two news sources. So, but that's a discussion for a different day. But overall, I agree. Dave may have the best answer. Dave in New Berlin says, I vote present.
Well, Dave, now we're not going to be able to determine a winner, but thanks.
Yes, very, very well done. Of course, that's the other big story we're following right now, the House Speaker's race. And now new report it's been going back and forth, but apparently the most recent reporting we have a couple of minutes ago is that the vote for Speaker of the House, the first vote, they have not gavelled that shut yet. So there are 3 Republicans that are holding out. Mike Johnson needs to get one of them to flip their vote in order to be Speaker. If he can't do it, they'll gavel that first round closed and go to a second round. But for now, they're trying to twist the arms. I can't imagine those conversations of those 3 Republican members trying to get one to flip to make Mike Johnson the Speaker of the House. So we'll continue to watch that.
You're still part of the team, right?
Right. I've heard that one before. What's worse, arrogance or ignorance? Listener on WMDX says arrogance by a mile. Ignorance takes but a minute to change, while arrogance takes a lifetime. Len, listening on MDX in Madison, says arrogance may be worse, as the ignorance may be remedied with learning. Arrogance more difficult to change. And Tyler, listening on WMDX, says arrogance. Even though we live in the information age, some people don't know everything or missed a key part. Ignorance is easier to be accidental. Sometimes being called ignorant sparks the education. Arrogance is always on purpose, unquote. That's a good point as well. Jeff Perry, our ongoing contributor and friend on watching on Facebook. This is really good. One of my favorite stories from Charles Dickens' A Christmas Carol. Quote, "Spirit, are they yours?" Scrooge could say no more. "They are man's," the spirit said, looking down upon them, "and they cling to me, appealing from their fathers. This boy is ignorance. This girl is want. Beware them both, and all of their degree. But most of all, beware this boy." And Perry says, "I agree with Mr. Dickens. Beware of ignorance." Really good.
And that's where it comes in with what Casper said and what many others are saying, is that they're often tied together. People stay ignorant either. I mean, to some extent, you don't know what you don't know. But if a situation comes up and you realize you don't know and that you should, if you're not arrogant, you will make an effort to learn.
If you choose ignorance, right?
Right.
If you, and I think we talked about this, ties into what we were talking about a little bit yesterday. If you don't want to have the hard conversations that challenge what you feel is true, but you're presented evidence that you know contradicts that, if you choose not to have that conversation and challenge yourself, that's where it becomes willful ignorance, in my opinion.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, Steve, watching on YouTube, says arrogance. Of course, everyone knows ignorance is bliss. Well, there's some truth to that, right? Steve also had a good comment earlier. We were talking a little bit about back and forth language, particularly on the Democratic side, in this great article in Politico by Democratic U.S. Senator Brian Schatz. Steve said, at age 60, and much like you, Todd, I've been on both sides of the political aisle. Plain, understanding, middle-of-the-road communication is mandatory for the Democrats to win. Like Tammy Baldwin, term and age limits are important too. He makes a great point. Again, I feel that's part of why Tammy Baldwin got reelected, in my opinion, in a tough year for Democrats. Again, we've talked about this with Trigby on this show. She goes around the state of Wisconsin into the small towns and places that overwhelmingly vote Republican for other races, and she sits and has conversations. And you know what? Maybe the most important thing, because I've seen her do it, she listens. She doesn't come in there and demean people. She doesn't come in there and use academia words. She doesn't come in there and say, this is why I'm right. She's like, so how's it going? What's going on here? And if they want to unload a little bit on her, she listens and says, I get it. You know, I mean, I'm paraphrasing now, but she doesn't get into arguments. She'll listen, and then she might point out and say, well, you know, it is important, I think, to remember this. And she'll lay a fact on them, but not in a demeaning or hoity-toity way. And the other thing is, because Trivy has seen it himself, she finishes her beer at Wisconsin bars. It's true.
Not a lot of politicians will do that.
No, she's not there for the photo op. She's not there to take one sip of beer and walk out. She's there to actually have a beverage with her constituents, all of them, and listen. And I think that Tammy Baldwin epitomizes, perhaps more than any other politician that I've seen, that she's not just a senator for those who vote for her. She's a senator for all Wisconsinites.
Yes, regardless of policy, we need more people like that in our government.
Yeah, absolutely. What's worse, arrogance or ignorance? 855-752-4842, 855-752-4842. If I had to vote, I think my vote would be for arrogance because I'll agree with some other people. I think that's more chosen sometimes. You choose to be arrogant. If you make a choice to be ignorant, that's even worse. But again, ignorance sometimes is bliss. All right, come on back. Little Peter Rapine, the week in review. It's the Todd Allbaugh Show for a Friday. Thank goodness on the Civic Media Radio Network.
Madison's real news and great conversation. 92.7 WMDX. Local radio for you and your community. It's Civic Media's mission with stations across Wisconsin. Find your favorites at civicmedia.us.
When he gets here,
News, I'm Savannah
I'll say this again, but just in case
There's a fundraiser this weekend for the Abundant Life Christian School community. It's at the Red Rooster, a live music bar on the east
There
side.
he is,
They're calling
star
it
of
Harmony
stage
for
and
Healing.
screen.
It's
The
from
always
noon to 6
dapper and
on
debonair
Sunday, and it
Peter
seems the
Rapine.
event has grown so
What's up?
much that they'll
How
have
you guys doing?
I'm well. How are you?
Doing well. Yeah.
Are you putting your pants on? Thank you. We appreciate you putting pants on for this segment.
I'm not.
I mean, it doesn't matter.
Maybe that could be the new title, Pantsless Pete, with the week in review.
I'm putting my socks on.
Oh, all right. You have to stay warm, Pete.
Exactly. Yeah, it's cold here.
Really, yeah, it's chilly here as well.
I have audio for a few of the stories that CP sent us. I don't know if you're using them or not, but I'll just let you know what I have. I have the whole, like the Waukesha neighbor thing.
Okay.
That's like a minute and a half. The cakes on cakes, I edited it down to 30 seconds and got rid of swear words.
Okay.
And then the Christian wrestling, the first 30 seconds of that video is incredible. So those are the three things I have.
Yeah, I love his selection today, so we're just going to do those.
All right. Okay. Wow, CP is doing better. He's not beat out by Rapine today. I love it.
I know. Yeah, well, it's been a crazy couple of weeks of news, and I want to keep it light. And I think he's got he's got a good eye.
All right. Very good.
Definitely got it.
Just FYI, we have this this wacky vote for speaker happening out in Washington D.C. We're keeping track of. So if we're not going to delve into it unless there's some breaking news. If Johnson flips somebody and becomes speaker, or if Keaton Jeffries somehow becomes speaker, we'll break in and report that.
Cool.
Definitely got to make sure people go check out the videos, though. There's some that don't work on radio, but like the video of them handing out. I mean, I'm not going to give these away. The videos are very good.
The videos are very good. Let's go to the videotape. How are your holidays, Peter?
They were great. I was back in California for a couple days.
Oh.
Really nice to see family. Rained a bunch. Was all over too quick, though.
Yeah. Well, that happens.
Ain't that the truth?
Yeah.
Are you okay, Peter? You seem a little down.
No, I'm good. Yeah, it's just been
a long day.
Yeah, I'm just making sure I'm 100% caught up on all these. It's been
you're reading.
Happened to the last.
I was going to say, it looks like he's reading.
Yeah.
Staring into the. Are you okay?
Since you want to play some audio, Aaron, is there one you want to start on? Make sure we get all those.
Whichever one of those three you're most excited about, I guess.
Okay.
All right. Well, Zomer, I'm not sure. So I'm watching CNN, and they've just flipped 2 votes, and now it's their Chiron says Johnson appears to be elected House Speaker.
Yeah, New York Times is also saying that.
All right, ABC is way behind. Allow it. Well.
Yeah, New York Times has 218 for Johnson, so they flipped 2 people.
Yep. All right, we'll do this. We'll do this quick then, Peter, and then we'll go to.
No worries.
To you.
And I think I'll start with cakes on cakes.
Sounds good.
Cakes on cakes.
All right, got 30 seconds.
All right, thank you. wherever it may lead, and having fun doing it. Welcome back to the Todd Allbaugh Show on the Civic Media Radio Network on January 3rd, of Friday, TGIF 2025. 34 minutes now past the hour of 1 o'clock. And before we get to our friend Peter Rapine for some having fun doing it part, a little bit of pursuing the truth. Breaking news at this hour. It appears that Mike Johnson has been elected House Speaker. That's how quick things move out there. Just take a 4-minute commercial break and it's all over. Mike Johnson got 2 of the Republicans, 2 of the 3 that were holdouts, to flip their vote to him. And so now Johnson has 218, Hakeem Jeffries 215, 1 member still voting for someone else. That means that Mike Johnson has secured a majority of those present and has been elected Speaker of the House. So there you go. Crisis has been averted so far. A little drama here that gave us something to talk about for the first hour. But, again, for the institution, for the working of government, probably better just to have a neat ending to the day out there in D.C. Again, Johnson is elected Speaker of the House, 215, with 1 Republican member voting for somebody else. 35 minutes now past the hour, 1 o'clock.
I like big butts and I cannot lie. You other brothers can't deny. Now when a girl walks in with an itty bitty waist and a round thing in your face, you get sprung. Wanna pull up tough?
Time once again for Week in Review with our friend and ongoing contributor Peter Rapine. He is the managing editor of Allbaugh's World. Zommers, what in the world you dial up? I gotta believe that does not make the Mike Johnson playlist on Spotify. What was that?
Well, Baby Got Back by Sir Mix-a-Lot, of course.
Sir Mix-a-Lot. Yeah, I forgot how very good. Peter Rapine, welcome back to the show. Happy holidays, my friend. Great to see you. How you been?
I've been great, Todd. Happy New Year's.
Happy New Year's to you.
This first story is going to be a nice follow-up to the Speaker of the House news.
All right. and ties in a little bit. All right, what do you got, Peter? Let's get right into it again. Just for people who have not heard this segment before, these are actual headlines from actual events, real human behavior, not fiction. These are actual things that your folks at Allbaugh's World scour the internet for and report to us.
Yes, and we'd like to have a nice mix of things happening on the internet and things happening in the real world. This first story is something that you can only get online because the internet, I think, is only a place where stuff like this can kind of fly. Headline reads, "Woman makes beautiful cakes, then sits on them." And this is a fetish.
Woman makes beautiful cakes and then sits on them. Go ahead.
So this is a fetish TikTok account called Cakes on Cakes, where a woman makes a beautiful cake. Clearly she has some baking history. Yes. The first 30, 40 seconds of any video is her decorating the most gorgeous cake you've ever seen. And then it ends with her sitting on said cake and squishing it.
Now, to play the role of my mother for a minute, she would, if she's listening to this, she'd say, now, why would somebody do that?
The better question is, who is watching these videos?
Yes, I agree 100%. Not that somebody's doing it, but that people are actually watching this.
And if anyone listening is over the age of 30 and has been online a long time, they'll probably remember a website called cakefarts.com, where a woman used to do a similar thing, but she would also fart on the cakes. That's not happening here. She's just sitting on them.
No flatulence involved.
No, zero.
It's only as the song is appropriate that Zommers played to come into the segment because she has a rather large it's very nice. I'm not judgmental, but she's not a slender posterior person.
No, she really earned the handle Cakes on Cakes. It's not false advertisement by any stretch.
No. And I'm watching this video right now that you've linked in your story on Allbaugh's World. And this isn't somebody that's just making a Betty Crocker mix cake. She's a real baker. I mean, she's going to all this work to put the different layers of decoration on there. I mean, she really is a very talented baker.
Yeah, if anyone listening is familiar with the genre of video that is known as the hydraulic press genre, where people put marbles or cans in between a hydraulic press and then you watch it slowly get crushed. It's like that, but her body is the press.
But with cans, I kind of get it. Cause like, it's like Letterman dropping stuff off of the old NBC building or whatever. You want to see what's it.
Well, in this cake, she filled it.
Will it float? Yes.
She filled it with a bunch of goop. I mean, do you want to listen to some audio from the video? See how it turned out?
If we must.
Sure. Why not? Why not?
Welcome back to another episode of Cakes on Cakes, where I take those two big gumdrops there and we crush some cakes with it. But first, you gotta make it, and today's cake is inspired by I don't give a because I did not want to make a cake. I was on my period. I was just not in the mood, but I thought I would use that as my muse for today's cake, so I would have content to be made. Yeah, she came out pretty solid, but now that she's done, you guys know how it is. We gotta go ahead and crush her. Goodbye, buddy cake.
She is now sitting on the cake.
I'm not gonna lie, because I had to freeze it, it did not goop out as much as I would wanted, but it's whatever, it's done. All right, well, until next time, guys.
Dave in New Berlin asks, so you can see cellulite imprints in the frosting? Yeah, you actually kind of can. Thank you for that audio, because that really made it for me. I love somebody who's forthright and just says, I'm on my period, I didn't want to do this, but I gotta make content.
It's a grind out there. Everyone's grinding, yeah. Right. And she does wear clothes. She is wearing yoga pants in the videos. So if you go on the site looking for something else, you're not going to find it.
It's not porn. It's just
no, but it is a fetish. For someone.
I guess it might be a fetish. Cakes on cakes. That was absolutely a fantastic way to start off, Ray Pine. What's your next headline at EPOM's World?
So our next one is actually a local story for you guys. News headline reads, News investigating murder may have accidentally interviewed the guy who did it.
And before we go on, this is real. And I said to Zommers before we started the show, when you sent this, or CP sent it, we live in Wisconsin, why had I not heard about this? And it says it's real. News investigating murder may have accidentally interviewed the guy who did it. Go on.
So the news stories from October, a dead body was found wrapped in a tarp, and a clip has come out of a man being interviewed. And I believe that he is now one of the prime suspects in the murder.
And this happened in Waukesha, Wisconsin, where we have one of our stations. I shouldn't be laughing. But a dead body discovered wrapped in a tarp in the middle of a park in Waukesha, Wisconsin. And go on, one of the local news crews interviewed a man on the street type of thing.
And it turns out that he was one of the people who allegedly sent a tip into the police about the murder. And I know they say that typically like serial killers or people that do things like this like to be involved. They like to watch the case kind of get solved. Do we have audio for this one too, Aaron?
All right, here we go.
Just a block from the Waukesha County Courthouse, across the street from Frame Park, a body was found in the wooded area behind this small apartment building.
It's bizarre. It is bizarre. You wonder what's going on.
Conrad Leischvik was heading out of his building yesterday when he noticed police outside. A neighbor told me a man doing yard work for the building found a body wrapped in a tarp.
Going back just a little bit further.
Deb Hernandez lives up the hill from the apartment building, and her property includes some of the wooded area behind the apartments. Her first thought, like Conrad's, is this is somehow connected to the homeless people they see living in Frame Park.
We're so close to the river and everything.
This is the third body in the last month found in the city of Waukesha. September 6th, police say a man accidentally drowned in the river in Frame Park. On October 27th, a homeless person was found dead of natural causes on the Glacial Drumlin Trail. Police say this death is considered suspicious. However, they don't know how the person died or who the person is.
I feel like it's sad. I honestly feel like it's probably the homeless, and I feel like it's a sad situation. Waukesha police say they can't say more about the death except that it is suspicious until they get back all the testing from the medical examiner's office. In Waukesha, Rebecca Clough, TMJ4 News.
So there was the actual cut from TMJ4 News in Milwaukee, television station, interviewing this guy who identified as Conrad Leichwick. It turns out the guy's real name was Kevin Leichwick, and in his apartment, police claim they found, quote, handwritten notes that they believe were a hit list. Peter Rapine, what up with that?
Yeah, who knows? Who knows? I mean, I guess the police got lucky this time, right? They got a nice hand from the local news. So when people say the news isn't what it used to be, right? Send them our direction.
Right? Yeah. I mean, and obviously it was just, serendipity or whatever you want to call it, but a little eerie, right? I mean, that would have been like like a news reporter interviewing Ed Gein, and he said, geez, I had that sandwich down the street. Boy, it did not taste right. As it turns out, Gein, I mean, come on. All right, that was good. A little Wisconsin flavor, no pun intended, and very good. All right, next headline, Peter Rapine, week in review here. All these stories can be found on ebombsworld.com. Real headlines from real stories.
So the next story comes to us from the UK. So there's an issue of church attendance. Church attendance has been falling dramatically in the United States, in the UK, in Europe, around the world for decades. And some churches have come up with a new way of getting people into the pews. And this church, headline reads, "Church hosts wrestling match to get people back into the pews."
I love this. Church hosts wrestling match to get people back into the pews. Look, it's tough out there for pastors to get people into and this is creative. Go ahead.
Yes, I mean, in the U.S., like the mega churches, they have all the money in the world, so they can hire, flame techs and guys with trucks and guns and you name it, pyrotechnics at the wazoo. Yeah, they're theater performances now.
Exactly.
But in the UK, mega churches haven't really caught on, so ROKing someone is probably the best way to to get someone into church on a Sunday morning.
So they're hosting actual wrestling events inside, but it's not. Is it during service or is it just like a side thing? Like, come to 10 o'clock, we'll have service. Followed by a potluck dinner, and then at 2 o'clock, it's the mask taking on the chain or something. I don't know.
Well, you'd expect them to host it afterwards to get people to hang around, but I like to imagine that the priest is the referee, and he's giving his sermon as people are like clotheslining each other and kicking each other and punching each other. Yeah.
Wait, and a good pastor, priest, whoever, they could wrap that into the story, the biblical story, right? You could have
a retelling of David and Goliath in the ring,
right?
Who would want to see that? Yeah, the crucifixion, right? Revelation.
Talk about young people coming into the church, David and Goliath in real time, baby.
And here comes Jesus. He flipped a table.
Right? Taking on the tax collectors.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
This is what young people want to see in church these days. And God love the British for being, a little ingenious here. And when you say, just so our listeners understand, when you say mega churches, we're not talking about quote unquote Trump mega churches, although in some cases that might be one of the same. We're talking
MEGA,
right,
huge,
like big, these big churches that are, like you say, have budgets of over millions of dollars and bring in they're productions. They're not so much church services as they are productions.
Yes, mega. Yeah, MEGA. Yeah.
Right. I just had to clarify that because the term has kind of been bastardized now. All right, Rapine, let's see. We're coming up on a break here. Going to do a little business, as we say, and then we're going to come back with more exciting and fun headlines from EPOM's World and Peter Rapine. How about that, Rapine?
Sounds great. I'm excited.
The always understated but effervescent Peter Rapine. It's the Allbaugh Show for a Friday on the Civic Media Radio Network.
Little in the middle, but she got much back.
What's the other clip you have audio for, Aaron?
It's from that one. We could start it. It is just the first 30 seconds of this video about the wrestling church is really funny.
All right.
So we could come back and then listen to it, or do you want to just come back into it cold? Or
you guys' call.
What do you guys think? I don't care either way. Let me hear a little bit of it.
1, 2, 3.
Kingdom Wrestling for me is this amalgamation.
Kingdom Wrestling?
Yeah, that's how it starts.
All right, you come back with that, and I'll explain it. We'll go.
Okay, sounds good.
Which ones do you want to make sure we get to, Ray Pine?
Which argues that the U.S. Constitution allows
I wanted to. Someone tried to drive from Long Island to the city.
Michigan GOP
Nice.
legislators.
Gamblers are buying
On
rocks.
December 20th, the federal Sixth
All right,
Circuit
very
Court
good.
of Appeals affirmed the lower court's denial of the Michigan legislators' claim. But importantly, it did so saying that while the individual legislators had no standing to bring the case, a full legislature could, leaving the door open a crack. The U.S. Supreme Court mostly dismissed the theory in 2023's Moore versus Harper case, but Justices Thomas, Gorsuch, and Alito appear to be all in on the theory. For the moment, the
For those watching the stream, here's your benefit of watching the stream. Peter comes to us today with a painting on his wall. Is that a painting that you have done, Peter, or did you buy that? Where did the painting come from?
This is done by an old roommate of mine.
Really?
Yeah.
That's very cool.
I didn't know I had it, and then I found it tucked away somewhere, and I said, "Oh, I gotta put that up."
Absolutely.
Actually, I think we have to talk about the streamers giving Zen to the uncontacted tribe. I think that is a must.
The lovers,
all right, we got
the
10
streamers,
seconds.
and me, all of us under it.
One, 2, 3.
Kingdom Wrestling for me is this amalgamation, this mesh of faith and wrestling. Any Christian will tell you that when you go through life, you wrestle with stuff. You wrestle with your faith when you face a really tough challenge. How do you see God in that challenge, and how do you continue to remain in faith? And I really felt that wrestling gives us that opportunity to tell those stories.
Welcome back to the Todd Allbaugh Show on the Civic Media Radio Network. 8 minutes now before the top of the hour, CBS ABC News, followed by Maggie Dawn. That is actually a promotion from a real church in the UK who, to boost attendance, has incorporated professional wrestling into their church services. One of the great stories you'll find on EPOM's World at epomsworld.com, managing editor thereof. Peter Rapine joins us on a bi-weekly basis, once again, from his beautiful abode in the city of New York, New York. So nice, they named it twice, Peter Rapine.
Yes. I love all the things you have to say about me. It makes me feel so good.
Well, good, because we enjoy, you're one of the guests we enjoy because this is why I enjoy having you so much, because you're a real guy. You're just a real dude, and there's nothing fake about you, and I love real people. Yeah. I love hanging out with real people. Yeah, absolutely. All right, what are we going to get? Want to make sure we get these important. Again, these are real stories, not made up. And Peter and his staff stay up through the night to make sure we bring you the latest and greatest. Go ahead.
And this next one, I think we're going to wish wasn't real. I think there are some details that are still kind of fuzzy about it. Headline reads, "Did these idiot streamers really give Zins to an uncontacted tribe?" And if you don't know what a Zin is, spelled Z-Y-N, a Zin is like a nicotine pouch. They come in different milligrams, and they're really popular right now. They're kind of like a new thing for vapors. Tucker Carlson loves them notoriously. A lot of people really love them. The Haberman guy is a big fan of them.
Really? Is it an oral thing you put in your mouth, or is it you attach it to your body, or what? In the mouth?
It's like a Nicorette. You kind of suck on it.
Oh, okay.
And it's a nicotine stimulant. But these guys and their names, and they go by the Nelk Boys. They're pretty famous. I know they've palled around with Trump. They've done streams. They're typically the type of streamers that will give their friends $100,000 gifts or Rolex watches or cars.
Didn't Trump go on one of these with some kid and he gave him a watch or something like Rolex?
He did, yes. He went on a stream with Aiden Ross, who is kind of a disciple of the Nelk Boys.
Got it.
Definitely inspired by. But this is a YouTube video of theirs where they go to, I believe it's in South America, though it might be in Africa. I'm not 1,000% sure. They don't explicitly say. But in there, 20-minute video of meeting this dangerous, uncontacted tribe. One of the guys whips out a can of Zin and lets the tribesmen have a pouch, as they say.
And where was this tribe at?
I cannot 100% confirm.
Like South America or Africa or what?
I believe so. I believe it might be.
Oh my gosh!
In the Amazon somewhere.
So these goofballs go into uncharted territory with tribes that have very little contact with other human life, and they just give them these Zin pouches.
Yeah.
Just for giggles.
Just for their own giggles, which is clearly there's a lot going on here, because obviously they're making content for like 15-year-old kids. It's funny, right? We gave them a Zin. But those things are pretty addictive. And if you've ever had one, you're probably going to want another one. Yeah.
And also, what kind of a budget these people have where they're giving out Rolex watches and taking trips to, the Amazon just for content? I mean, we give our guests a bag of cheese. That's the kind of budget we have. We ain't giving Rolex watches out, you understand?
When you're being bankrolled by companies like Stake or other gambling sites, you kind of have an endless amount of money. Sadly.
That's what we need to do. We need to get a deal with a gambling site.
I don't know about that.
Get the FanDuel money.
Right? The FanDuel. Yeah. We need to do a show out in the desert with Brent Musburger and FanDuel. That's what isn't he with FanDuel? I think maybe.
I'm not sure.
All right, we got 2 minutes left, 2.5. What do you got next, Peter Rapine?
All right, keeping in line with the gambling, there's a new gambling trend, and this one comes to us from China. Obviously, in the U.S., sports gambling is massive, but there's a new type of gambling where people buy rocks in hopes of finding precious gems. So headline reads, gamblers are now buying rocks in hopes of finding precious stones.
Gamblers are now buying rocks in hopes of finding precious stones. Have I got a bridge to sell you in Brooklyn? Go ahead, Peter.
And it's not quite clear if the videos are all fake or if they're just like engagement, or if people have ever actually found a precious stone in one of these rocks, because I haven't seen proof of that yet. But if you go on TikTok, there are countless videos of Chinese gambling guys, which is like boxes and boxes of rocks wrapped up in duct tape. And they like grab a rock and they pick it up and they like give a guy $10 and they run home, open up the rock and put it next to, put it under a saw. And every single video ends in the same way, where the guy looks at it disappointed because it's just a rock. Like nothing happens. And you can watch them endlessly, hundreds, there's thousands of them. And we assume they're gamblers, but and you can obviously sell a gambler anything.
This sounds a lot like cryptocurrency to me, quite frankly. I mean, it turns out it's nothing, but yet people are buying this stuff.
They are, yeah.
All right, well, sadly, Peter Rapine, we've run out of time. We're up against the clock. You always bring us some laughs and make me feel better for having talked to you. Thank you so much. Have a wonderful day out there in New York. And we'll see you in a couple of weeks.
Thanks so much, Todd. You too, Aaron.
Thank you, Peter. Happy New Year. All these stories can be found at epalmsworld.com. Thank you to Mr. Zommers and all of you for listening again. We have a speaker. Mike Johnson has been elected. We'll see you next week. For all of us here, whatever you're fighting for, whatever you believe in, do not give up. Keep banging your drum. See you Monday. Maggie Dawn is next.
All right. Adios, everybody.
All right, everybody. Thank you. Adios. Bye-bye.